and welcome. Today I'm going to show you how to make this slip stitch hat. I just love how it turned out. It's got such a beautiful stretch to it. I love how the seam is just about invisible, but there are some tips and tricks on making this. At the very end, I did a couple rows of single crochet just to make it fit my head a little bit better. So let's see what we need to do for this hat. The width of my hat was 17 inches. It seemed to fit my head pretty good, it has a lot of stretch, and I have a 22-inch head. The length was 10 inches or 26 centimeters, and that seemed to be long enough. When you've reached your correct width for how big your head is, you just want to make sure you stop on opposite ends. And then what we'll be doing is putting our hat folded in half. We will then stitch up the side, and then at the very top, we're going to use that, gather it up, and that will be our hat. So that's the process of making this. So let's get started. Let's start with a slip knot. We will then make a chain about 13 to 15 inches long, or 34 to 38 centimeters. I did about 46 chains, so then my stitches across were 45 stitches. Everybody will be different depending on your yarn and your hook size. Try to keep your chains loose. So my chain was 15 inches long. Remember, this is the length of your hat. Your stitches will really decrease in the size as you start putting your slip stitches into the chain. You can see that my hat was only 10 inches long, but I tend to be a very tight crocheter. Try to keep these stitches loose. We will now work into the back loop of each chain. So we're going to do a slip stitch into each chain and that little back loop. So right in there, insert our hook, grab the yarn, pull through one and pull through two. That is your slip stitch. Let's go into the next loop. Grabbing the yarn, pulling through one and two. Again, try to keep this loose. As you continue with your slip stitch, you'll be able to go through both loops a little easier if it's looser. So inserting your hook and pull through two. This is how it should look. Let's continue all the way to the end. Here we have our last chain, inserting our hook and doing our slip stitch. Once you have reached the end, we're going to do a chain one and turn. Starting in the first stitch, right here, we're going to go into the back loop of each slip stitch from the round below. So working in that back loop, pulling the yarn and slip stitch. It's a little bit tight. I tend to crochet tight, but if you can keep it looser, it will be better. It might be easier to grab the yarn, go through one and go through two, whichever way works best for you. So again, inserting, you can go through one, then two, or you can insert the yarn and go through both. Whatever way works best. Let's continue to the end of the row. When you do reach the end of a row, make sure you always get that last stitch and slip stitch. We don't want to miss it. And every row will be a chain one and turn. So here I've already done quite a few rows, and you can see here sometimes it doesn't look very even in the stitches, but as you can see in my stitches down below, right in here, it all works out. So don't worry about the unevenness as you're going along. So you can see here, I only have about 10 inches in the length of my hat. It is stretchy, and you can see how when I started, it was a lot longer. So here's my original chain, and if I stretch that out, it did come to about the 15 inches. So I'm just measuring here. So here I have about 11, depending on the stretch, but I did start at 15. Remember, that's the length of your hat. As we crochet along, this is the width of your hat, because we're going to continue along until it fits your head. We'll be folding it in half, gathering up the one end, and the hat will be like this. So we're going to continue crocheting until it fits around the size of your head. So here we have the size of my finished rectangle to make my hat. It's nice and stretchy. This stitch does not work up really fast, but the outcome and the look of it is absolutely beautiful. So take your time with this. It's an easy stitch. Remember, you always have the same amount of stitches in each row, and that way you will have your perfect rectangle. When you're done your rectangle, we will then be folding it in half to stitch up the side. Leave a tail of about 20 to 30 inches, cut your yarn, and pull through. Line up your stitches, and with your darning needle, we will stitch this closed. So we're going to go into one of these loops here. It's like this little loop here on each stitch on the one side. Let's just zoom in. So it's kind of the back, so you can see the front will be left with that V stitch. So let's start at the very first stitch here. We'll go into this loop here. And on the other side, we're going to go into the back loop. So here into the back loop. And now we will go into that upper loop there and then into the back loop. And just pulling along as you go. You can see the stitch here. So the one that kind of curls up, and the back loop of the other side. One side and the other. And I just pull snug as I go. We can continue all the way to the end, always going into that little loop of the stitch. And then into the back of the other side. We'll see you at the end. So this here is the inside of our hat. And if you turn it around, that's our right side or outside of the hat. And you can see how this stitch blends nicely in to all the other stitches. With that same yarn and on that same hook, we're now going to gather up the top of the hat. So we're going to go in and out of the top of the hat. So let's just do the very top stitch here. We're going to go into every other row. So here, in, and then out. And into the next one. So just in and out. And we're going to do that all the way around. Let's continue until we reach back to the beginning here. We can now gather up the top of the hat. So just pulling lightly and getting it into a nice gather. Keep gathering until you have a really small hole. Once we have finished gathering, we will stitch that hole closed. We can then tie our beginning end to our other end. So let's just tie a knot. This makes it nice and secure. Remember to leave these ends so we can attach our pom-pom. I have a pom-pom that has one of these elastic loops here to attach. You can attach it with a button inside, but I like to put mine on permanently. So here's the elastic. So I'm going to put my hook inside my hat, right up into the center, and I'm going to pull that elastic through. So we'll just get this and pull it through. We can then take the two ends that we have left there and secure our pom-pom. We can then cut our ends. Your hat is now complete. I wasn't 100% happy with how the edge was, so I decided to do 2 rows of single crochet around that edge. So I've already completed 1 row of single crochet and I put 1 stitch in every second row. This was my beginning yarn here. So after the first row, then I went around and did a second row, putting 1 single crochet in every single crochet from the round below. When I got to the end, I cut my yarn, pulled through, and I closed with an invisible stitch. Weave in all your ends. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know if you have any questions or concerns in the comments below. Thanks, and see you next time.